Deathmark is so much more than I thought it was going to be. When I seen this on the store shelves, I assumed it was just a straight horror visual novel that I can use to squeeze just a bit more life out of my Vita. After all, I like horror, I like visual novels, and I like my Vita. This was a match made in heaven, but man did this take me by surprise. By my estimation, as a sucker for all things horror, Aksys has delivered us a gem here. This isn't just some ordinary visual novel, there's quite a bit more to it than that. The game revolves around a very simple premise. You play as a man who recently received the death mark, a mysterious pattern of sorts that can appear anywhere on a marked person's body. This mark is a curse, inflicted by mysterious, malevolent forces that will cause its victims to gradually lose their memory and eventually their life. As new victims get marked, they find themselves gravitating towards a mansion estate, where once there lived a woman who possessed knowledge of the phenomenon. However, this woman is no longer here. The victims who arrive on site must work together. They must use what little remains of their memory to recall when and where they got their curse. Then they set out to investigate the area and hopefully find a way to erase it before time runs out. For the weak-hearted, I grant a warning. This game depicts some pretty heavy levels of gore, especially for a Japanese title, and it can be a tad disturbing at times. It will also occasionally mix in elements of eroticism that, while not perfectly meshed in with the story, generally fit in well with horror atmospheres nonetheless. It's also worth noting that one image from the game has been obscured in compliance with ESRB complaints. This image is obscured on all platforms, but from my understanding, it requires a patch to take effect, so retail copies of Deathmark without patches should remain completely uncensored. Moving on. Investigations into Deathmarks work like point-and-click adventure games. You head to where each character believes they got their curse, and click your way through each area as if in a dungeon crawler. Using a flashlight, you can look around the rooms, and little glints of light will indicate to you what can be investigated. Through this, you collect many notes and items that will be important in puzzle solving. Throughout your adventure, you will come across many roadblocks, whether they be locked doors or passageways filled with snakes. To get by, you must study your notes, then find and use the right items to progress. Occasionally, you will also be interrupted by spirits who seek to test you. At these times, we enter something called live or die moments. These spirits will bombard you with a series of questions or riddles that your collected notes and previous exposition should have given you the answers to, if you were perceptive enough to notice it. As you answer the questions, you're on a timer of sorts that counts down rapidly. Every wrong answer will massively drop your time limit. If you time out, it's game over. You will also come up against direct confrontations with spirits, and I'm going to show the first one here as to not spoil anything from later in the game. If you don't want to see this spirit, just click to this timecode here. Now that the warning's out of the way, let's get into it. These confrontations are pretty cool. Spirits will advance upon you, and it's up to you and the partner you've chosen to work with to use everything you know and find a way to fend them off. Both you and your partner make use of items simultaneously. Some items have a different effect when combined, and it's up to you to discover the right pattern of items for each enemy. But be warned, too many mistakes and you both die. However, anything less than perfect and your partner may die while you remain. Deathmark has multiple endings, the best ending of course being a no deaths run. I didn't realize this at first and ended up with a normal ending, that while not disappointing to me may be disappointing to some other people. While we're talking about endings, there's something we must address. After this game released in Japan, a DLC chapter was made. All North American versions of this game have that DLC chapter, except for the Vita version, where it costs an additional $10. The Vita version is therefore priced $10 cheaper than its competition as a result. Also, having characters die over the course of the game was one of the more interesting things to me. It kept the illusion of fear alive, so I'm in a bit of a toss-up over the true ending requirements, as much like with Until Dawn, no death runs just suck some of the shock and terror out of the game. But the game has no shortage of spooks while living anyway. It kind of has that Fatal Frame thing, where if you look around at just the right times, you may catch glimpses of things from beyond this realm. That's sure to keep you on your toes. Not every plot choice and story arc is that interesting, but none of them are very long, so it doesn't really end up being an issue. As a mega horror fan, It was pleasing to me to see some inspirations from things like Candyman sprinkled throughout the game. And some of the deaths bring to mind games like Umineko. Truly, this is a horror game for horror fans. The runtime isn't overly long, but this may work to its benefit, as the locations are rather limited even for its runtime. Plus, nothing stays scary if it overstays its welcome, and horror typically works better with shorter form. I clocked 16 hours, but had a few hours of idle time. 12 to 13 seems as though it should be about standard. So that's about the long and short of the story and gameplay. Overall, I got way more than I bargained for. I was expecting a straight visual novel, but I think it'd be a fair estimate to say that 70 to 80% of this is actually point-and-click adventuring. The art in this game is a true highlight for me. I've seen on other platforms like Switch and PS4 that the game looks a little bit sharper and a little less grainy. And this is a time I find myself in a position where I feel like the more affected version of the game is actually better. Whether due to limited capabilities or higher compression, the Vita version is a bit grainy, and I think this looks amazing when combined with the art style. It makes it look like the whole thing was captured with an early 2000s low megapixel digital camera. If the Blair Witch Project or August Underground Mortem has taught me anything, don't watch that second one by the way, you've been warned, it's that seeing limited production values can give us a stronger anchor to the real world and make the whole thing that much easier to believe in and get invested in. So much of this art makes the atmosphere feel fully realized. Densely wooded parks, derelict schools, sewers, abandoned parking lots, all dimly illuminated with your flashlight that barely seems to be able to break through the stifling darkness around you. And when you get event CGs, holy crap, some of these are just twisted and disturbing in the most pleasing of ways. The music in the game is also great. There isn't a lot of it, and again, like some story arcs, it wears its inspirations on its sleeve, with some tracks bringing to mind Tubular Bells, the theme from The Exorcist, or even the Halloween theme. Most music is atmospheric, however, and it's all used quite sparingly for stronger effect. More often than not, you'll be exploring with little more than the sounds of the world around you. And let me tell you, the sound in this game, at least for the environments, really does the trick, especially if you happen to be playing with headphones. It's all just so unnerving. So clearly, I really enjoyed myself, but that's not to say that this game doesn't have room to improve. Characters are mostly good, but despite their memory loss, I feel like they could still be elaborated on a little more. Location variety can definitely be improved as well. There's really not many of them, and you may find yourself revisiting them just a little too much for comfort. Exploring in dungeons is a tad jank. Rather than having a message box pop up and tell you that you moved all the time, they should just crossfade to the next image near instantaneously. This message box business tends to make exploration slow and cumbersome. The mini-map should be able to rotate if desired, and be zoomed out just a little more. There's a couple typos in the game, but nothing I deem really worthy of note. Voice acting is so sparse that we might as well consider it non-existent. And lastly, I think there should be a time chart when you beat the game. That just allows you to drop in at major decision points where characters can die, so that you can redo your choices without replaying or fast-forwarding through the whole game. But that's really about it. As a new IP, man, I was really impressed. I'm not usually one to say, I hope they make a series out of this, as most games seem fine to me as one-and-done adventures, but I hope they make a series out of this. This premise is so simple, so effective, and so transferable that I think they could easily do more with it without losing any of its appeal, while simultaneously addressing the game's slight shortcomings. It's definitely a cool little title. But that's where I'm gonna leave this review. Normally I would leave horror reviews until October, but where this one is on Vita, I gotta spread the news to the Vita owners while they still have a chance to buy it in stores. As always, folks, thanks for watching. Congratulations on making it to the end of this video. If you like what you saw, then hit that like button. Maybe consider subscribing. If you really like what you saw, consider supporting the show on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where you get episodes like this one early. If not, I hope to see you around for more episodes in the future.